Welcome everyone to this particular video, and what we are going to be discussing today is going to be on Python operators. A Python operator is basically a tool that allows us to do various operations between variables. And we're going to be discussing three types of Python operators through this video. The first is going to be arithmetic operators. The second is going to be comparison and logical operators. And the third is going to be assignment operators. So let's get into it. So, arithmetic operators are basically operators that does some sort of a mathematical operation on variables which have been assigned a numerical value. So you have the basic ones such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And you also have the not so common ones such as modulus, exponentiation, and the flow division. So let's try to tackle each one of these so that we have a basic understanding about how to use them and where to use them. So let's kick it off by initially assigning the value 1 to x and the value 2 to y. And if we print y minus x, it's just going to do a basic mathematical a subtraction operation and output the value 1. So the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division is going to be similar to what you see in a normal calculator. But let's try to understand what a modulus does. To understand what a modulus does, let's look at this particular example. So it says 5 modulus 2. What it is going to do is, what Python is going to do is, Python is going to check how many 2's are there in 5, and then if there is any sort of a remainder, that's going to be output. So let's say for an example, 5 has how many 2's? You have 2 2's. So, and you also have a remainder, right? And that remainder is going to be the output of this particular operation. So if you run this, you will see that 1 is the output. So similarly, if you do 7 modulus 4, what Python is going to do is it's going to check how many 4's are there in 7. So you get 1. And then there is a remainder which is going to be 3. And that's going to be the output here, right? Next is the exponentiation operation. A little difficult to pronounce. Basically what it is the power operation in Python. So 2 to the power 3 is basically written as 2x3, and then you will get the value of 8. The other one is the flow operation. So what the flow division, okay, not the flow operation, but the flow division does is, it's going to divide 4 by 2, and then if there is if it is not a whole number, then it's going to be rounding up to the nearest whole number. So in this case, it's going to be 2 because 4 is divisible by 2. But if you do 4 flow division 3, it will give you an answer. If you divide 4 by 3, it will give you an answer something like 1.3 something. But what the flow division does is it's going to round it up to the nearest whole number, and that is why you are getting 1. So if you do 6 flow division 3, that is basically 6 divided by 3, which is going to give you 2. But if you do 6 flow division 4, it's going to round it up to the nearest whole number 1, simply because if you do 6 divided by 4, it's going to output 1.5. So these are the basic arithmetic operations that exist in Python. So the next set of operators is going to be comparison and logical operators. What a comparison and a logical operator basically does is it's going to compare the values between two variables and output a Boolean value, or what we call as a true or false value. So you're only going to get 2 outputs when you do a comparison or a logical operator. Okay, so let's try to understand. You have a few. First one is equal to. Basically, this is going to check if the value on the left is equal to the value on the right. So in this case, it is. But if you say 4, then it's going to return false because the value on the left is not equal to the value on the right. You can also check if it is not equal by the use of the exclamation mark. So if you do exclamation mark equal, that is basically going to tell Python, look, is 5 not equal to 4? is the value on the left not equal to 4. So if you run this, you will see that it's going to return true. But if you try 5 again here, you will see that it is false, because simply the value on the left is equal to the value on the right. The next value, the next operation is greater than. So if you have, let's say for an example, if you do this, right, 5 greater than 5, it's going to return false because it is not. But if you do 4, then it's going to return true. If you change this around, we call this the crocodile's mouth. If you change it around, this is going to return false because 5 is not less than 4. If you put, let's say, 6 here, then it's going to return true. Okay, you can also add an equal sign to this side to tell whether it is equal or less than the value on the right, whether the value on the left is equal or less than the value on the right. So in this case, it is true, and if you do 5 here, that's going to return true as well. But if you do 4 here, that's going to return false. Okay, so if you change this mouth to the other side, it's going to say whether the value on the left is greater than or equal the value on the left. And if you run this, it's going to return true. And if you do 5 here, that's also going to return true. Okay, so these are the few comparison operators that are there. And on top of that, you also have logical operators. So logical operators are simply where you're trying to check if there is two things that is becoming true. So for an example, or two or more things that we are trying to compare. Okay, so let's say we're going to do x is greater than 5, and if you do and x is less than 10, sorry, x is greater than 5. So let's do this. Okay, so let's assign a value to x. Let's say x equals 5, and then we're going to try and check if x is less than 6 and x is less than 10. So if you run this, it's going to say true. Let's change this around to 10. Then it's going to say false, because the AND operator will only return true if both of these statements, this particular statement and this particular statement, is true. You can keep on adding other statements that you want to make sure is true, and then if all of them are true, it's going to return true. Got it? So that is the AND operator. But if you change this to OR, either one of these, okay, at least one of these, if one of these statements, at least one of them returns true, then it's going to return true. So in this case, you can see that x is equal to 10, and we have assigned x, we are going to be checking whether x is less than 6, and this is going to return true. So because of that, and this is also going to return true, and because of that, this is going to return true. Okay, so the OR operator is something like that. Then we also can do this. We can say the NOT operator. So let's say NOT operator is basically going to take the opposite. Okay, it's going to return the opposite of it. So let's say if this is true for this particular case, right? So let's do this as 11. So this is true. This particular thing is going to be true. So if you just run this, right? If you just run this, this is going to say this is going to say false. So let's put something like 2 here. Okay, so this is going to say true, right? But if you put a NOT operator, this is going to return false. Okay, so this should not be. So because this is going to take the opposite of it, so it's initially going to compute whatever that is here, and then if it is true, then it's going to be made to false. If it is false, then it's going to be converted to true. So let's try to make it a true statement. Let's try to make it a false statement. So if the inside of this particular parenthesis is true, is false, then it's going to return a true statement. As you can see, this is going to return false, and this is going to convert it into the opposite. Okay, so that is a set of comparison operators and logical operators. So the final one is going to be assignment operators. So an assignment operator is basically used to assign a value to a variable. So we already know about how to assign values to variables. So for an example, we can use x equal 5, which is basically going to assign the value 5 to the variable x. So if you print this, you will see that it is printing 5 because x has been assigned the value 5. Now let's say that you want to add 3 to this particular variable. Okay, you don't want to change the name of the variable, but rather you want to add 3 to this variable. So ultimately x will be equal to 8. So you can do this, right? So when you do this, basically what it will say is, look, x is going to get a new value, and what it is going to be is the initial value plus a 3, right? So when you run this and if you print it, you'll see that x is now equal to 8. Now there is an easier way, I mean not an easier way, but a much more concise way to write this particular code. And that is, let's say now we want to convert x now, which is at 8 to 10. And what you do is you say x plus equal to. So if you extend this, right, I'm going to add a comment just to state what this is actually doing. So it's going to say x is going to be equal to x plus 2. So instead of writing this whole thing here, you can do this. And if you print, okay, if you print x, you see that it is 10. Okay, so there are various, I mean, simple ways of doing these assignments. So instead of subtracting like this, you can do this. Multiplication can be done like this, division can be done like this, modulus, flow operations, as well as powering it up. There are other bitwise operations that can be done, which is going to make your code much more concise rather than extending it to a very long length. Okay, so these are basically all the operators that we're going to be discussing through this particular video. We discussed about arithmetic operators, we discussed about comparison and logical operators, and finally assignment operators. So we hope that we can see you in the next couple of videos as well, where we'll be diving into other basic things that is associated with Python. Thank you.